The coffee in my hand was still warm when I saw the photograph slide under my apartment door at exactly 11:47 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wasn't waiting for anything. But there it was, a single Polaroid lying face down on my wooden floor, as if someone had been standing right outside my door, breathing on the other side. I picked it up slowly, my fingers trembling for reasons I didn't yet understand. When I flipped it over, my breath caught in my throat. It was a picture of me, taken today, at the grocery store. I was reaching for apples, completely unaware that someone was watching, documenting, preparing. Written on the back in red ink were 4 words that made my blood run cold. You remember now, Mateo? My name is Mateo Rivera. I'm 29 years old, a freelance graphic designer living in Portland, Oregon. I live alone, keep to myself, and until this moment, I thought my life was unremarkable. Forgettable, even. But that photograph told me something I had been trying to ignore for months. Someone knew something about me that I had spent years trying to forget. 7 years ago, I witnessed something I was never supposed to see. A private meeting in a warehouse. 3 men in expensive suits. A briefcase exchange. And then, a moment that changed everything. A 4th man, younger, terrified, pleading for help before one of the suited men gave a single nod. I didn't see what happened next. I ran. I ran so fast I thought my heart would explode. I never reported it. I never told anyone. I convinced myself that if I stayed quiet, I would stay alive. But tonight, that photograph told me the truth. They had always known I was there. They had been watching me all these years, waiting for the right moment to remind me that silence has a price. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it for a long moment before answering. Mateo, a calm, almost friendly voice said. It's been a long time. I didn't recognize the voice, but the tone was unmistakable. Authority mixed with threat. Who is this? You know who this is, the voice replied. Or maybe you've convinced yourself you don't. Either way, we need to talk. Tomorrow morning. 9 Uhr morgens. The old pier at Riverfront Park. Come alone. If you don't, the next photograph I send won't be of you. It'll be of your sister, Nova. My chest tightened. Nova. My younger sister, 24 years old, living 2 hours away in Eugene, working as a veterinary assistant. She had nothing to do with any of this. She didn't even know what I had seen that night. Leave her out of this, I said, my voice barely steady. That depends entirely on you, the voice said. 9 a.m. Mateo. Don't be late. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my apartment, the photograph still in my hand, my mind racing. Every instinct told me not to go. But every memory of Nova, her laugh, her kindness, the way she still called me every Sunday just to check in, told me I had no choice. I barely slept that night. By 8:30 a.m., I was already at the pier, watching the fog roll over the Willamette River. The morning was quiet, too quiet, like the city itself was holding its breath. At exactly 9 a.m., a man approached. He was in his 50s, gray hair, sharp suit, and a face that looked like it had never smiled. Behind him, 2 younger men stood at a distance, watching. Mateo, the man said, extending his hand as if we were old friends. I'm glad you came. I didn't shake his hand. What do you want? He lowered his hand, unbothered. Straight to the point. I respect that. Let me be clear. 7 years ago, you saw something you shouldn't have. We've known about you ever since. But we didn't come after you because, frankly, you didn't matter. You kept your mouth shut. You stayed invisible. That was smart. Then why now? I asked. His expression darkened. Because someone else remembers that night. Someone who's been asking questions. And those questions have led them dangerously close to the truth. We need to know if you've talked to anyone. If you've shared what you saw. I haven't, I said immediately. I've never told anyone. He studied me for a long moment. I want to believe you, Mateo. But belief isn't enough. We need confirmation. And until we have it, you're a risk. A risk we can't afford. So what happens now? I asked, my voice steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside this envelope is a name. The person who's been digging into the past. You're going to find them. You're going to figure out what they know. And then you're going to report back to me. Do that, and you and your sister walk away from this. Refuse, and well, I think you understand the alternative. I took the envelope, my hands shaking. And if I can't find them? Then I suggest you try harder, he said coldly. You have 72 hours. He turned and walked away, his men following behind him like shadows. I stood there, the envelope burning in my hand, knowing that my life had just become a countdown. When I opened the envelope, I found a single name written on a piece of paper. Dr. Nova Chen, investigative journalist. Below the name was an address in downtown Portland. Wait. Nova Chen. Not my sister Nova, but someone with the same name. The coincidence felt wrong, deliberate, like they were playing with me. I didn't know who Dr. Chen was, or why she was asking questions about that night. But I knew one thing for certain. If I was going to survive this, I needed to find her before they did. And I needed to figure out what she knew, because somewhere in the past I had tried so hard to bury, there was a truth someone was willing to keep hidden at any cost. As I walked away from the pier, I realized something that made my chest tighten with a strange mixture of fear and determination. For 7 years, I had been running from the truth. Now, I was going to run straight toward it. Because the only way to protect my sister Nova, the only way to protect myself, was to uncover what really happened that night, and expose the people who thought they could control me with fear. I pulled out my phone and searched for Dr. Nova Chen. What I found made my pulse quicken. She wasn't just a journalist. She was a woman who specialized in exposing corruption, illegal operations, and hidden networks. Her most recent article was titled, "The Vanishing Witnesses: How Silence is Bought and Sold." And at the bottom of the article was a note. If you have information about corporate intimidation or witness pressure, contact me. Your story matters. My hands were shaking as I saved her contact information. This woman wasn't digging randomly. She was looking for people like me, people who had seen something and stayed silent out of fear. But what she didn't know was that by asking the wrong questions, she had just put a target on both of our backs. I had 72 hours. 72 hours to find her, warn her, and figure out how to turn this nightmare into something that resembled justice. And as I walked through the streets of Portland, the photograph still in my pocket, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I wasn't going to let fear control my life. I was going to find the truth. And I was going to make sure that the men who thought they could silence me would finally face the consequences they had avoided for so long. Because 7 years ago, I ran. But today, I was done running. I found Dr. Nova Chen in a coffee shop on Burnside Street, hunched over a laptop, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with dark circles under her eyes that told me she hadn't been sleeping much. A woman consumed by her work, or maybe haunted by it. Her black hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore a leather jacket that looked like it had seen better days. I approached her table slowly, my heart pounding. "Dr. Chen." She looked up, her eyes sharp and cautious. Dark brown eyes that seemed to read people in seconds. "Depends on who's asking." "My name is Mateo Rivera," I said quietly. "And I think you've been looking for me." Her expression shifted instantly. Recognition. Surprise. And then something else, urgency. "Sit down," she said, closing her laptop. Quickly. I slid into the chair across from her. "How do you know who I am?" "Because for the past 6 months, I've been tracking a pattern," she said, her voice low but intense. "Witnesses who saw something 7 years ago. Witnesses who were never questioned, never followed up on, because officially nothing happened that night. But I found inconsistencies. Financial records. Security footage that was conveniently erased. And then I found you." "You shouldn't have," I said. "You've put yourself in danger. You've put me in danger." "I know," she said, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker across her face. "They've been following me for weeks. I knew it was only a matter of time before they made a move. But I didn't expect them to use you." I leaned forward. "What do you know about that night?" Nova glanced around the coffee shop, then pulled out a small flash drive from her jacket pocket. "Everything. The men you saw weren't just businessmen. They were part of a network that's been operating for over a decade. They handle problems for powerful people, politicians, CEOs, anyone who can pay. That night, the man you saw pleading for help? His name was David Reyes. He was a whistleblower who was about to expose illegal financial transactions worth hundreds of millions. He disappeared that night. Officially, he's still listed as missing. My throat went dry. So he never made it out. No, Nova said, her voice tight with anger. And you're the only person who can prove what really happened. You're the only witness who's still alive. Still alive. I repeated. There were others? Nova nodded grimly. 3 others. All of them gone within 2 years. Car accidents. Apparent overdoses. One was ruled self-harm. But I don't believe in coincidences. They were removed from the picture because they knew too much. A chill ran down my spine. So why am I still here? Because you disappeared, Nova said. You changed your routine. You kept your head down. You became invisible. They probably assumed you were too scared to talk. But now that I've been asking questions, they're worried. They need to know if you've spoken. They gave me 72 hours to find you, I said. To figure out what you know and report back. If I don't, they're threatening to involve my sister. Her name is Nova too. Nova Rivera. Nova's eyes widened slightly. That's not a coincidence. They're playing psychological games with you. Using her name to confuse you. To make this personal. My hands clenched into fists. It is personal. Then we don't have much time, Nova said firmly. What do you mean we? I asked. I mean, she said, meeting my eyes with fierce determination, that you and I are the only 2 people who can expose this. I have the evidence. You have the testimony. Together, we can bring them down. But if we're going to do this, we have to move fast. And we have to be smart. I sat back, my mind racing. Every part of me wanted to walk away. To protect my sister. To go back to my quiet, invisible life. But I knew the truth now. There was no going back. The moment I saw that photograph, the moment I heard that voice on the phone, my life had changed forever. What's your plan? I asked. Nova leaned in, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. We go public. But not through traditional channels. They control too much of the media. We release everything online. Encrypted platforms. Independent networks. We make it impossible for them to hide the story. And we do it in 48 hours before they have a chance to stop us. And my sister? I asked. We get her somewhere safe, Nova said. I have contacts. People who specialize in protecting witnesses. She'll be moved to a secure location while we finish this. I thought about my sister Nova. Her kindness. Her trust. The way she always believed the best in people. I couldn't let her become a casualty of my silence. Okay, I said. Let's do it. Nova nodded. And I saw something in her eyes that I recognized. The same fear I felt. The same anger. The same desperate need for justice. Then we start now, she said. Over the next 48 hours, Nova Chen and I worked together like soldiers preparing for battle. She showed me the evidence she had collected. Financial documents, recorded conversations, security footage from the night David Reyes disappeared. Everything was organized in folders on her encrypted laptop. Years of careful investigation. All leading to this moment. And I gave her my testimony. Every detail I remembered from that night. Every face, every word. She recorded everything. Asked questions I hadn't thought about in years. Pulled details from my memory that I thought I had buried forever. My sister Nova was moved to a secure location by one of Nova Chen's trusted contacts. A former federal agent who now worked independently protecting whistleblowers. My sister didn't understand why, but she trusted me. That trust was both a comfort and a weight I carried every second. We worked out of Nova Chen's apartment. A small studio filled with stacks of papers, whiteboards covered in notes and connections, and enough coffee cups to start a collection. She barely slept. I watched her work through the night, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Her eyes burning with purpose. Why are you doing this? I asked her during one of our few breaks. You could have walked away from this story. Found something safer. Nova looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the pain behind her determination. My brother was a witness once, she said quietly. He saw something he shouldn't have. He tried to report it, but the people involved were too powerful. After that, he went missing. Officially, he's still listed as gone. But I know what happened. And I've spent the last 5 years making sure no one else becomes a name on a missing persons report. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, she said, squeezing back. Be ready. Because in 24 hours, we're going to make sure David Reyes, my brother, and every other person they tried to erase finally gets justice. On the morning of the third day, just hours before my deadline, we uploaded everything. The story, the evidence, my witness account, Nova's investigation. We sent it to a dozen independent journalists, encrypted forums, whistleblower networks, and international news organizations. Within minutes, it began to spread like wildfire. By noon, the story was everywhere. Major outlets picked it up. Social media exploded with the hashtag vanishing witnesses. The names we had exposed, the network we had revealed, could no longer hide in the shadows. My phone rang. It was the same unknown number from before. I answered, my heart pounding. The voice on the other end was no longer calm. It was furious. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Mateo. No, I said, my voice steady and strong. I made the right choice. And now the whole world knows what you are. There was a long silence. Then the voice said, you think this is over? You think you're safe now? I think, I said, that your influence is gone. And I think David Reyes finally got the justice he deserved. And so did Nova Chen's brother. And every other person you tried to erase. I hung up. Nova Chen looked at me, exhausted but relieved, a small smile on her face. You did it, Mateo. We did it. You just changed everything. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt tired, scared. But also, for the first time in 7 years, I felt free. Because I had stopped running. I had stopped hiding. And I had proven that even when powerful people try to bury the truth, one voice, one witness, one person willing to stand up, can bring everything into the light. My sister called me that evening. Mateo, what's going on? I'm seeing your name everywhere. You're all over the news. I smiled, tears streaming down my face. It's a long story, Nova. But I promise I'll tell you everything. And I promise you're safe now. Are you safe? She asked, her voice soft and worried. I looked at Nova Chen, who was sitting across from me, finally allowing herself to rest. I looked out the window at the city lights, at the world that now knew the truth. Yeah, I said. I think I finally am. Because the truth, once spoken, can never be silenced again. And I was no longer the woman who ran. I was the woman who stood. 3 weeks later, arrests were made. The network was taken apart. The names we exposed faced trials. David Reyes' family finally got answers. Nova Chen's brother's case was reopened. And Nova Chen and I, 2 women who had been strangers bound by fear and silence, became friends bound by courage and justice. Thank you, she said to me one evening as we sat in the same coffee shop where we first met. For what? I asked. For trusting me, she said. For not running when you had every reason to. For being brave when it mattered most. I smiled. We were brave together. And that, I realized, was what made all the difference. Not one voice alone, but 2 voices refusing to be silenced. Not one person standing, but 2 people standing together. Because that's how the truth wins. That's how justice prevails. And that's how we take back our lives from those who tried to steal them.